Oh, I'm excited. I got Marianne Bachynski on the show today, and we are going to be talking about how purpose-driven leaders thrive when everything is changing. And we're in a mode of uncertainty right now. This is the connecting LinkedIn and StreamYard and doing all those things. Marianne is leading by example today in relation to this, as she has done for her career. So, Marianne, thank you so much for joining me on Vision Pros Live.
It's great to be here.
It is. We had a good laugh, or we were talking about getting ready for the show, and we were talking about dress and attire. I won't go into that, but we're having some fun. And so she wrote this book called Fit for Uncertainty, and I think that's where we're going to start. Is what does that actually mean? And those of you who are listening in, I think it's great to take a breath and kind of meditate on this subject, because I noticed that when I was evaluating what does it mean to like being fit for uncertainty, I started to fall into the fear of the unknown a little bit. And I don't do that. Like that's not my natural state until I realized, wait, maybe it kind of is weird. Like our instincts are so powerful. So I was like, well, wait, it kind of even makes me lose sight of purpose and clarity and impact just to think about the uncertainty. And so we're going to learn some amazing things from Marianne about how do we get recentered. So I had to take a breath and recenter myself and think through, okay, how can I make sure that when I'm presented with uncertainty, I don't lose sight of my purpose, clarity, and my impact. So without further ado, what does it mean, Marianne, to be fit for uncertainty to you?
Well, to step back and put a little bit in context, I've had a career in technology. I've been a CIO in a number of businesses in financial services, and I've had pretty much of a whirlwind career, doing a lot of transformation, a lot of innovation situations where we were doing things under incredible time pressure that we had never done before, and really, striving to sort of break through to new ways of acting, leveraging new technology, creating and supporting new businesses on behalf of our clients. And the world we live in today has just really exponentially created that environment and it made it the new normal. So the idea behind the book was really to share some of those experiences, but also to really look at and step back how you make a lot of the actions you need through uncertainty and what you need to solve very complex problems, what you need to move forward even when the path is unclear. How do you make those situations repeatable, habit, and really second nature so that they're not
Mhm.
so overwhelming? And how do we help people that are really just stressed in dealing with all the noise? And where do you start to get the signal?
Oh my goodness. And the potential for all of that to have sped up and sped up and sped up is, I think, really, really, really high given AI. There's so many changes taking place right now. And so it can be very hard to deal with, and it can mess with our emotions, it can mess with our ability, our lifestyles, etc. We all see it with the amount of notifications that we get, and the fact that most people have these like glued to their hand and magnetically in front of their face. It's weird. But yes, it's a reality that we deal with. And for those of you listening, I'm talking about cell phones. The one that you're probably looking at right now. Okay, so there's a time and a place. There's a time. This is the time and place. Okay, Marianne, back to your credentials. I want to highlight something that I think most people may overlook. For the companies that you've worked with, what's the longest standing tenure you've had with one of the companies you worked with? How many years?
23.
Holy crap. Okay. So that's freaking awesome. And now here's why this quantifies and qualifies Marianne so much, my friends. 96% of businesses lose within 10 years. I mean, they're out of business. They're gone. It is so rare for companies to make it past the 10-year mark. This company she was with for 23 years. And that to me, like it would be different if Marianne spent a career jumping different companies. Sure, we would still learn a ton about changes and evolutions and transformations, but the fact that she also has at least one of those companies that has been around for more than 20 years tells us that the depth of what she's able to share with us is something that is for me, it's highly respectable. It's like, okay, that's a model I want to take a look at. So one other weird question for you, Marianne, in these environments, did you work under the confines, or rather, that's not fair, with the authority and operational systems of Waterfall and Scrum? Did you tell me about your experience with those systems, or did you guys like never care about those things?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm old enough that, that Waterfall was kind of the way, and then obviously Scrum we moved to. And I think what's interesting with that, Waterfall is very heavy analysis up front, which I'm a big buyer of, really
Me too.
the heck out of why and what before you jump to how. But it was linear, right? And then, Scrum, people thought, oh, this is terrific. We don't have to do the analysis. We don't have to document. We just go, and then we throw it in, and, if it blows up, it blows up. And nothing really could be further from the truth. And it's sort of an interesting thing, because if the reality is the faster you move, the more formality you need. And you're really just doing the whole life cycle multiple times, iterating multiple times through that process. So you better be good at it, right? And but I think also I've always seen those types of methodologies as a guideline, and I have always adapted my own style and my team's style and how we want to approach things, because there's comfort in definition that can be very misleading. We have our status meetings, we have our Gantt charts, we have our this, we have our that, what could go wrong? And I have always been very anti-status meetings, because not to say you don't need to have touch points, but the focus of them has to be on what the problems that need to be solved are, and what the decisions that need to be made are, not the green stuff that's done. And also the focus has to be on being transparent of what's really going on. And, that sort of sits outside of this sort of formal project management life cycle, because to me, you really have to always be looking proactively about plausible problems and, and places where you need to pivot, and the ability to address the problem before it happens. Because if you don't tell people what's going on and then it happens, it's too late. So that whole thing, I mean, I guess I'm a hybrid person who takes some of those classic project management things, but, in practice, you have to be much more agile. And
are you saying that you take the best of the principles of all concepts and use them for that? Isn't that just wise? I love that. Visionaries, the rest of you, again, it's not about fitting into one box as much as seeing, because they're not boxes, but they are opportunities to see what can learn from each. Again, AI can do a great job of also helping you break down these concepts. If you're new to them, you can ask it, say like, hey, can you translate what Marianne and Jackson just said, and figure out what I need to use to apply for my growth. That's really what this is all about, visionaries. So those of you in the upper echelon of like, you understood what we just talked about, you now know you have a phenomenal person you go consult with about what has Marianne seen on both sides of the spectrum. So Marianne, let's go back to the original question.
One other comment I would say, I think this thing that people lose sight of is process is not the product. You might have this great process, but you fail, right? That's not to be confused with the product and the outcome you're after. Anyway.
Huge. No, I think I can think it's a very painful statement you just made. Thank you. I'm just remembering some challenges we've had along the way. So Marianne, let's go back to that question I asked in the beginning then. I think we're ready for it. So what does it mean to be fit for uncertainty?
Well, again, I use the word fit because I think it's mental, physical, spiritual being, attitude. It's all of those things. And as we know, it's much easier to fall out of shape than to get in shape. So it's a discipline around, having practices and habits of how you work. How do you approach a problem in solving it? How do you interact with people? How do you collaborate? How do you get information? How do you distill that information? And you have to have an attitude that is positive and that you believe that you can conquer whatever you're trying to conquer. You also have to have the behavioral skills, the communication skills to work with people and come up with the collective intelligence. And if you can't communicate, you could be the great technologist of the world, but if you can't communicate, you're not going to succeed. And then there is the technical skill being whatever your skill is. It doesn't necessarily have to be technology, but you're technically what your skill is. So there's three kind of components that have to work together, which is just about being a human being, really.
Yeah.
There's nothing magical here, right? But it's about giving the attention to all of those things because they're equally.
I'll double down on that. There is something magical. It's the results. And I'm going to tie it right back to what you said about this, because you said you put this in my mind the last time we talked, but now it clicked for me in a way where I think I'll be able to permanently remember that Fit for Uncertainty is about exercising in uncertainty and exercising in preparation for it. And that's, again, why you chose that word. And I'm looking at that like, wow, you basically just gave away the entire secret of what we're going to talk about. But my friends, if just because I know that I'm supposed to exercise my body, if I don't have a great plan, right, and I only exercise one muscle, I might have a bicep that's massive, but I will have a body that's distorted, and I won't have the health that I need. And so we're going to reveal more practical secrets. But I love that concept because you've just empowered, Marianne, the world with the ability to realize that, hey, look, even if you just go about the basics, and figure out what the basics are in health, go walk 10,000 steps, go do 100 push-ups per day. Like you do those two things and you eat moderately, like most of us are going to have a pretty healthy life with just those 3 steps. Drink lots of water, right? I'll add a 4th. There you go. My God, most people would be healthy if you just do those things. And so we're going to talk about what can we practically apply in order for us to be ready for uncertainty and see it more as an opportunity rather than to fear the unknown. And so we're going to conquer our fear of the unknown by recognizing the opportunity and uncertainty. We're going to come right back. I want to gather my thoughts a little bit. I want to get a little drink of water myself. And we're going to dive in a little bit further about everything we can. We're going to extract as much as I can from Marianne. So Marianne, be ready for me to extract as much as possible when we come back. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We'll be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into this live broadcast of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business. And I'm super excited to have Marianne Bachynski on the show today because she just brings a world of depth. And every time I get a guest like this, I get to dive in. It's like being given free, amazing consultation that I don't have to pay for. Like, how cool is that? And here she is helping us with understanding how purpose-driven leaders thrive even when everything is changing and the world is changing all around us. And it can be disrupting for our team members. It can be disruptive to our market. It can create uncertainty within ourselves and our families and beyond. And really, I think what I've seen is leaders that are phenomenal tend to bring a matter of a feeling of peace, a feeling of calm, a feeling of like, hey, not only is this okay, but there's tremendous opportunity with what we have in front of us. And learning to see and recognize that, again, we're going to try to pull all of that out of Marianne in this session. And before I do that, though, I've got a few other resources for every single one of you to talk about. One of them, in relation to uncertainty, I can't recommend highly enough Journey to Wellness and Dr. Shannon and Dr. Justin Pierce. I met them over 8 years ago. And Dr. Shannon is known to be kind of a miracle worker in the health space. And I've sent 3 people to her that I can remember. I think a 4th, but I know that there's 3 people that I sent to her. Every single one had an illness that they were told wasn't necessarily incurable, was something they were going to have to deal with for life, though. And they didn't feel satisfactory with the opportunities with the doctors and the solutions they had met before. After talking to Dr. Shannon, I talked to every single one of them. Every single one of them raved and were like, oh my gosh, like she's changing my life. What a miracle. And it's not magic. She does the right testing. She knows what testing to order and how to put people on the right track. And she's been through some serious health challenges herself as well. So again, I can't recommend it enough for those of you who are going through health challenges, or you know somebody who is. I recommend checking out and learning from them what they're up to. On the next one, Practice Makes Permanent. Practice Makes Permanent is a company that has been recently developed by Jennifer Reed. That doesn't mean she's new to what she does. In fact, Jennifer Reed's worked at the IRS for more than 20 years. I know some of you are going to turn the show off right now because I said that. But what I want you to think about is realizing that the bureaucracy she probably has to deal with, the culture. Personally, I don't even think I ever want to see the IRS. But she's in there day after day working with people. And what she's done is she's become a transformational EQ and SQ specialist. It's emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. And not only has she trained in an environment that, again, I've heard horror stories about, she's trained in that environment, but she's also has a personal story that if you ask her about, please have your tissue box with you. You're going to need it. She has every reason for wanting to help every single person on earth understand the value of emotional intelligence. She's become a great friend of mine over the last 6 months. If you're in a position where you want to improve your culture, improve your revenues, improve your results, I highly recommend talking to Jennifer Reed. And then there's the Water Project. The Water Project is something that is near and dear to my heart. It took a lot of meditation to figure that out because I've always had access to clean water. I've never had an issue with it. I'm down in Ecuador right now on a humanitarian trip. And again, never been thirsty in my life. I'm without water right now. I wish I had some. But to prove my point here, if you look at these pictures, these kids are pulling water from who knows where. They have to leave school in order to go get water, which is dangerous, by themselves. Their parents have to leave work to go get water, to wash clothes, to boil water, to make food, etc. And I realize that there's millions of people out there who don't have access to something that is just so essential and so easy for us. And the next picture you're about to see, these kids are celebrating water with more vigor than my kids celebrate Christmas Day. It's a very humbling reality. So I don't mean to bring you down as much as help you realize that you actually get to pick a community through the Water Project. Once you donate $10 to it or however much you're going to donate, you actually get to see that project come to fruition. The Water Project sends you evidence of what they built, whether it's a sand dam or a borehole well. And I love the transparency that they create. So my secondary hope is if you don't have the money to financially give back, that you decide to share this with a friend or family member. And that could be through social media posts, but I recommend looking at a project and then bringing it up over dinner, over lunch, over breakfast with somebody, and just talking to them about it and saying, what do you think about this? You might be the catalyst for inspiring somebody to fund a dozen of these projects. You never know how far the ripple effect of your own good will go. And so, my friends, there's 8 billion people out there who need a lot of help. If there's another cause that inspires you, my last request is drop that in the comments so that I can go and I can look and see what that causes. I will personally take a look at every single one of those comments that we get and see if there's a way that we can support it or spread the word for it. And without further ado, we're going to back to helping every single one of you. And so Marianne Bachynski, again, we're going to be talking about on how to be fit for uncertainty. Marianne, you ready to tear it up with me?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get it. I'm excited. So we talked about what it means to be fit for uncertainty and how exercise, right? Being able to do the exercises necessary so that we are well prepared for uncertainty is a big part of that. Let's dive into how purpose-driven leaders or how purpose-driven leadership creates stability during change. I alluded to a little bit before we started talking, but how does purpose-driven leadership have an effect on stability and overcoming uncertainty in your eyes?
Well, the purpose is clarity, right? And I think through uncertainty, clarity is the what you're pursuing mostly of all. And I think also being calm through stress and through pressure. And the only way you can, when I first started at Morgan Stanley, I was like, wow, this is really insane. I have to build a way to be in this for the long haul. Otherwise I'm going to burn out. And that's where I kind of developed this, which I think is a great word, exercise your mind, your body, and your spirit every day, right? And have that discipline over each of those components because they all matter. And I think if you as a leader can show that calm, we're going to get through this, we're going to do it together. and we're going to succeed, right? It brings some stability to the situation. And then also you really need to, again, be able to work through and find the clarity. And they have to make that repeatable. I mean, I always used to remark on the fact that when we would do a project, there would be this overly optimistic approach that, we were green until we were amber until we were red because we weren't managing it correctly. Why are we planning for everything to go 100% perfectly? It's just not, it's just stupidity. And
yes, it is.
Over and over again. And so, that's the whole thing where you have to be looking forward and for obstacles and roadblocks. And like the same note, if you have a production problem with technology, right, the system's down, something's happening, something's failing, why are we starting with this like, oh my God, the world is ending, like we've never been here before? We've been here before. We know how to do this, right? We know how we should work through this and what the steps we should take. And again, it's really trying to bring that habit is the best word to say it, of and an approach that makes things in digestible chunks that you can get your arms around and allows you to pace yourself to get to the finish line. Because if you're constantly in chaos and you're constantly churning and you're constantly starting from scratch every time, it's exhausting.
Huge. You inspired me with your rhetorical question, by the way, to answer the rhetorical question. And so there's two realities here. You asked the question, why do we plan for things to go perfectly? And the point of it, guys, just stop doing it, right? That's the bigger point. Like, make sure that you're aware. But I think it's important too for us to recognize the why so we can condition ourselves not to fall victim of it. And I'm going to put it square on my hypothesis, expectation. Expectation is the root of all heartache. I love William Shakespeare's quote about it. When I learned that, it broke my heart to realize it had already been breaking my heart for most of my life. I expected things to turn out a certain way. And so as young entrepreneurs, especially, and those of you, when I say young entrepreneurs, anybody who has a business that's less than 5 years old, even if you've done it multiple times, you're probably still in that mindset of like, oh my gosh, we have to hit our quarterly expectations are a vice. Esperanza, aspirations, hope, those are the virtues. And so if we can settle our expectations down and realize that those are the bonuses in life and build based on the principles, then we can more pragmatically help our team realize too, like, hey, it's okay that we're not planning for perfection. We're aware of what perfection could look like. That'd be awesome. But we also need more pragmatic. And I think more companies would make it to the 10-year mark in a thriving process if we would settle down with our expectations and allow for grace in the process. So super wise words, Marianne. I absolutely love that. Now, let's go into the next topic. We can always come back, but I want to make sure we cover everything for the audience that we promised. So the mindset shifts that leaders must make in fast-moving environments. I came up with one of my own, but what mindset shifts do leaders, well, we also just talked about moving from expectations to aspirations. But what mindset shifts are required or helpful in terms of thriving through an uncertainty?
Well, I think everything has to be looked at. It's not one and done kind of thing. It's not that you set the plan and then you go and you never change the plan ever. You have a strategy and then you go and you never change the strategy. You have the people in place in the roles they're in and you never move them around. Or you never help them when they're failing. It's again, it's the ability to iterate and iterate and iterate and experiment really. You have to continue to pivot and you have to be adaptive. That's why there's so much focus on adaptive leadership now, because it's really table stakes and mandatory in the world we live in. A colleague of mine, Steve Davis, will tell you you need adaptive IQ. You don't emotional EQ, adaptive EQ. IQ. You need a lot of Qs in your life. And,
True.
And that adaptive piece is really, really the most critical. So you have to again look at things that that you're comfortable with are not ever really complete.
Love it.
Building a culture is a continuous journey, as an example,
Yeah.
and you're going to be constantly having to make changes, whether they're resources, adding them or changing them, or, or it's what's included in the project, what can be done by this date, or it was just physically impossible, like, so why are we pretending? I mean, really? And there's a natural sort of avoidance mechanisms that we all have, right? Well, I'll keep doing the little C tasks and not free myself up to go after that big ugly A task that I'm scared of, or I'm going to resist this project. I don't believe in it and it's against my morals or whatever, and I'm not going to engage, or whatever it is. People have these things where they have coping mechanisms for change, and they won't really embrace it, right? And so that again it's really a mindset of, how are we going to deal with this? Not, am I going to deal with it, or am I going to avoid it, or whatever, and hope it goes away? It's not going away.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Earlier you talked about comfort, which can be a good thing, but oftentimes, especially when it comes to growth, it's like the enemy of growth. You get in your comfort zone, right? And now you talked about coping mechanisms. Most of the time, those are instinctual or habitual, and they're things that we can retrain. Some of the words that came to mind that we haven't used yet related to the mindset you're talking about are fluidity. Right. You talked a little bit about rigidness, right. And being like overly focused, or maybe, and I've been dealing with over functioning lately. I've been dealing with it finally. I am an over functioning individual, like all the time. I have been for most of my life. And so as I learned about it, I realized that I could do exercises to make myself turn off at 70%. Right. That's something that ChatGPT hooked me up with. And I was like, oh, man, it's changed everything. Like, all the results have gotten better as I've calmed my butt down, and gotten out of the way of things. So fluidity is a big one. Another one that I've heard a lot from different mentors and gurus is the flow, like a river, and be able to be, because fluidity gives you more than just flexibility. And it allows you to really accept things as they come and kind of move with it. So those are two things that you inspired out of me. The one that I thought of in terms of mindset that I'm going to give a huge shout out to my coach, my main coach, Fletcher Ellingson. That guy, I have never met a coach as great as Fletcher. I've met some phenomenal coaches. His big word is curiosity and creativity. It's remaining curious. And I got to give a shout out to John Jaramillo as well, of the Book Leads podcast. He was on recently, and he said, I will die on curiosity, as the key. And so yesterday, to call myself out, I butchered a meeting badly. And my two colleagues, I could feel, it was palpable, the air of just how awful the meeting went. And, the underlying feeling was humiliation. And why did that occur? Because instead of training well with the team and being curious about their inputs, I began to cut off their inputs, and I began to put on a persona of condescension. It killed everything. It killed the mood. It killed the process. It left me alone in the reality, and it created an environment where our day kind of suffered. We found ways to make it better. But I had to, that night, I wrote a big apology note, and to two people who matter the most to me in the world. And it was because it's not because I wanted to forget about curiosity. It wasn't because I wanted uncertainty to lead me to feel frustrated. It's just because it happens to us as human beings. And so if we as human beings, as leaders, can recognize and remember that our best is not, it's not good to control. It's not good to condescend. It can open doors. It can make everybody feel better if we will dive into being curious as well. So that's another mindset. And you can't be curious if you're rigid. So those are some of we'll transition to practical insights for leading teams through ambiguity and transition, some of which we've talked about. We're just going to keep pouring onto this. So Marianne, what are your thoughts on that? Feel free to dive into your own examples as well. But I want to hear all about practical insights.
Well, I mean, I think I've mentioned in the past, curiosity is the number one trait I look for when I interview people, because it is the foundation for ideation, for innovation, for, everything, right? For analyzing situations, and you have to have that. And what does curiosity imply? Well, it implies that you're learning all the time. You're never done, and you have to be comfortable with the fact that there's going to be surprises along the way. There's going to be challenges along the way, but it's okay, and you're going to get through it. I mean, the control part is just a death nail. I mean,
yes,
where the whole command and control is, if you're called on the carpet to come in and present your status, and like you said, the expectation is that everything needs to go well and you need to make me look good. That's not open and honest dialogue. That doesn't breed transparency. It doesn't breed trust, and it doesn't keep people upfront about what's really going on. So the whole thing falls apart.
Well, it's a strong symptom and sign, a big red flag of survival mode as well, right? Somebody who is controlling is like, that's what you try to do when you're surviving. So it's good to recognize.
And I think one of the travesties of the CEOs last now 18 months or something crazy, whatever. It's been 2 years, 3 years now. It's like a minute, and so senior management tends to flip over all the time. And one of the worst things that people do is say, I'm just going to ride this guy out and hopefully I'll make it, I'll survive to the next one. And this person has these quirks and I'll deal with it. And then but that's just so depressing.
Yeah.
It's just so far from making a difference. And you can't do transformation unless you have that kind of, recognition that you need to change, that you want to change, that you're going to try to change.
Right.
And now
so much is within our control.
Your business model has to keep evolving or else you're going out of business. So it's not aspirational anymore. You're not going to be able to compete.
Yep, exactly. So I got to go back to this thought you placed, because now it really struck me, and I'm like, cool. I can't wait for how I can apply this. You said curiosity is the number one trait that you look for when interviewing. How do you look for it? What are the secrets? Are there certain questions that you ask or certain pieces that you pick up on curiosity? I'm super intrigued.
Well, sometimes it's, how do you, when you ask the age-old question, tell me about yourself, right? What do they focus on? Why are you in the work that you do? Do you like that? Or, what makes you tick, kind of thing. Why are you interested in working at this company, XYZ? And what about this position attracts you? How do you make decisions is a big one. Really the heartbeat of any sort of organization is decision-making, right? And so how do you go about making progress and making decisions and working through problems, and how do you solve problems?
Nice. Those are really good questions. Okay. Those two especially really open it up for me. I can see how tell me about yourself, can also allude to it, but I would have to look at ChatGPT and be like, hey, how do I see signs of curiosity through the question, through an interview when I ask somebody to tell me about themselves. But I can also see how do you make decisions and how do you solve problems are direct correlations. I'll venture to guess, and you correct me if I'm wrong, please, because these secrets are super valuable, that if the interviewee is asking a lot of good questions, that's also a really good sign that they have a curious personality. So, I don't think there's a right or wrong on this, visionaries, but I am curious about your perspective, Marianne. How many questions that they have are too much, or like, is it okay that they open up and ask a lot of questions? In your experience, in your cultures, has that been something that y'all are really grateful for when they come in with like 100 questions? Or is there what's the etiquette on asking questions as an interviewee?
I think people have gotten better at asking questions. I think historically they didn't ask enough questions because it was, you're going to be asked the questions. You do the interviewee, not the interviewer. So, I think now there's a lot more focus on behavioral and not just your skill set of whatever the job is. So, there does tend to be more back and forth. And again, have they looked into what the company does? Have they, do they ask you questions like, what is the culture of this company? How do you, to me, one of the best questions to ask is, how do you like working here? I always ask that question because I'd like, and when I'm interviewing for a role, like I want to know what the place is like, not just what they do.
So you're saying the interviewee asking you as the interviewer, how do you like working here? Right? Like, what do you like about working here as well would be a similar question.
Because that says, to me, that they culture matters to them.
Woo! Absolutely. And by the way, if you guys are testing this for the first time and you go into a place and the person you ask that to is in shock or makes you feel bad for asking it, don't feel bad. It's because their culture sucks. I can almost guarantee that.
That's right. Or they're miserable and they don't really want to tell you that in the interview because they need you to come in and do this work.
That's cool. When did you, if you can pinpoint it somewhat, what era did you start to notice the transition to where interviewees started to gain confidence? Because I remember being trained on this in 2000, it would have been like 2009 or 10 probably. I was looking for jobs back then. And I went through a training at, by the way, those of you listening, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a phenomenal free job training and job like coaching program. And so I highly recommend it. They taught me how to negotiate salaries. They taught me how to ask questions. They taught me the etiquette of going through the experience, which was extremely enlightening and very much helped me feel safer in kind of the uncertain environment of like, what the heck do you do in an interview? And so I got blessed with learning about that right from the get-go. Where did you see the change take place? Where have you seen that?
Well, I think it's generational. I think when with the Facebooks and the big tech companies coming in and they, they focus, they do have this concept, two different kinds of interviews, a tech one where you're programming, whatever you're doing, and then a behavioral one. And I think when the whole discussion about well-being and those generations have demanded that, right?
Yes, we have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, we never had well-being, and that was just, give me a break, right?
Yep.
Toughen up.
Totally get it. Yeah, exactly. Blue collar. I worked in the oil field too with my dad before that, and that's what really helped me say like, no, we're leading the cause. This sucks. And so yeah, I definitely, and we had options. We had cars, we had the internet. My brother wanted to work at Google. My stepbrother. And he knew he wanted to work at Wizard. He's like, you get free lunch. They have a slide. They do your laundry.
That's right. They have restaurants on campus that you can eat at, all different
20% off time to do what you want. Like, you're right. Those made some massive transitions. So, if you haven't paid attention to the transitions, get with the program. Come and join us. It's way more fun this way. And these companies have become some of the biggest, most successful companies in the entire world. It's not an accident, that took place and that those realities existed. So, Marianne, as we get ready to wrap up, let's use a couple more minutes on more practical insights for leaders who want to step with, again, not blind faith wise, but like more practically into how do we lead during uncertainty, ambiguity. We didn't really talk about that in transition. So maybe we focus on those two angles, but if something else hits you inspiration wise, like, feel free to reveal.
Well, I think I focus as much on what could go wrong than what can go right. Right. It's, if not more. And again, I think it's staying ahead of it and always thinking, what do we need to be doing differently, or what do we need to change, or even sort of the classic situation where people feel that they're being asked to do something that's just not achievable, and if you can then say, hey, look, we're not going to be able to do this for you. But we could do, we can't do 1 through 5, but help us figure out and tell us your priorities. Cause we could do 1, 2, and 3 or 3 of the 5. Right. And so if those kinds of things where you can actually walk it back and figure out, okay, then what's the minimal viable outcome that we can, that will really still serve the business and not, that where in my case, where tech is an obstacle to growth. We don't want to be that. Right. But to just sort of blindly march ahead when you know that you're sinking. And again, that's where the culture is so important. That's where communication is so important. And really knowing what's going on and figuring out, okay, how can we get the best result? If we can't necessarily get the result that we had started out to do, how can we get the best? And what is the most, I think the other thing too that happens is people drift, right? They start doing prioritization is key. And constantly prioritize and reprioritize, making sure that every single person is working on the top 3, 4 priorities, right? That's it. Don't be doing this little shit all over the place.
Yes.
Primary
objectives.
People kind of drift away and whatever. And if they don't have a clear understanding of the mission and where we're going, and they don't understand that, like I go back to the whole COVID example, every single person was working on getting people able to work remotely. And it happened in 2 weeks around the whole entire world. Unbelievable, right? There was no.
It was huge. I was so happy. I had worked from home since 2010. And so when that happened, don't get me wrong. I understand the suffering that people went through and all that, but on the silver lining of it, I was like, oh my gosh, people will finally understand me. They can understand my lifestyle and what it is. And so, it was a huge, it really woke the world up and transformed cultures.
But it created innovation because there was total clarity. Everybody had one priority. That was the only priority, and flatten the table, do everything we can to make this work. We don't have a plan B.
I will say that we are still suffering the consequences from this. And I love what you talked about. No, there's a lot. You talked about the worst case scenarios ultimately. That's kind of what I caught out of what you said is be prepared for the difficulties. And I have found that in my life, that's also one thing that separates great leaders from people who don't lead. And when I talk to people who are not leaders about worst case scenarios, there's like a fear. And like, what are you doing? Why are you so negative? And I'm an optimistic realist. So
I was just gonna say, it's not about being a gloom and doom. It's about being a realist. It's just right. Really practical.
And so leaders mapping out what the worst case scenario looks like, it prepares you for when it happens. You are that certain voice. You are the one who's like, it's okay. I know we're at, and like Marianne said, I love that. Learning how to lean into, okay, we couldn't get exactly what we wanted out of this, but what's the best thing we can get? That separates you from the majority of people in the world that I see like, oh no, everything's wrong. Now I have to just crush life altogether. Rather than again, enjoying what's possible and grateful. And so I'll go back to Fletcher, who's also taught me a lot about workability. And that's what I heard you talk about too, Marianne, is like, I love that scenario 5, because that's one of those exact scenarios. It's like negotiation is all about trying to find what's workable for both parties. If you can keep your cool and lead with that mindset, then oftentimes the compromise turns into what's necessary to produce the best possible results. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to frown and cry and hate life just because we didn't get everything we wanted out of it. I think that's something we're supposed to learn when like 2 or 3. And so it's good that we're revisiting this in decades 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's continue to lean into it. So there was one other big thing that you hit that I wanted to circle back to. If you have a pressing thought, Marianne, this is the time. Run with it.
No, again, I guess I just would repeat that, every day, exercise spiritually, mentally, and physically, and you can't go wrong. It really provides incredible clarity and calmness and gratitude.
Thank you. You inspired me, Marianne. This is for you, for your audience, for my audience, for all of us. I'm so glad you talked about the reality of COVID and I've worked virtually since 2010, as I mentioned. Scarier times are ahead for most corporations that are still practicing the one. You guys are screwed. The ones who are closing down work from home, you guys are freaking screwed. It is not a good idea. That is going to limit your growth. Rather than figuring out how do we empower people to have a better work-life balance while still getting results. You can do it, Elon Musk. Don't give up, dude. I know you're the one that's pushing everybody to get back into the office, but you don't have to get people back in the office. There are solutions, but you have to consult with people who know what it's like to go past the 4th and the 5th year challenges that will come up. And so we experienced it at Restaurant Connect. We experienced it at Video Power Marketing, but Video Power Marketing was a place where we conquered it. We solved the challenges. There are things that corporations can do to make sure that results are just as phenomenal, if not better, than what you had when people were actually working in the office. But one of the big keys and clues is, how do you build a true virtual culture? That is something that I do not hear talked about. Why? Because most people don't know how to do it. They've never done it before. It sucks to figure out. But once you figured it out, oh my gosh, it can change everything. So I'll plant the seed on that. Marianne, I know you got a lot of people out there who could benefit from it. I saw a big restaurant chain shut down recently. The other day it was Bahama Breeze. They got to shut all locations, and now they got Darden's going to be replacing those locations with other restaurants. But if you look at the news and you look and see every single month what layoffs are occurring, what companies are shrinking. Amazon, where there are 1,000 layoffs, and beyond. Like it doesn't have to be that way. We can still thrive, but we have to lean into figuring out the uncertainty associated with the work from home or the work back in the office and how to deal with it. So you got Marianne Bachynski, who's leading the way. She's got the book Fit for Uncertainty. Go check that out on Amazon. I highly recommend looking into it. More importantly, I recommend connecting with this beautiful, amazing author. She's got so much insight and decades of wisdom. I'll be doing the same. As long as, Marianne, you let me in your life, I'll be bothering you about these opportunities and figuring it out. If this was your last chance to talk to an audience of visionaries, people who are looking to build, this was it, what would your message be to them?
I think always to remember we're much better together than alone, and everybody's doing the best they can.
I love that. Visionaries, thank you for doing the best that you can. Thanks for joining us today. Together is better. So feel free to connect with us. And if you've got a vision that you'd like to share on the show, click in the top right corner at visionproslive.com. Top right corner says be our guest. Click the button. It's not mysterious. Click to book. Come and share something that's going to bless the world. And we'll be happy to have you on the show. And we'll see everybody in the next episode. Take care, everybody. Marianne, thank you. I'll see you behind the scenes in just a minute. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.